Very good morning. You're watching News 9. I'm Karthik Malhotra and we'll bring you all the top stories from the world of business and economy from India and around the world over the next 1 hour. You are watching Morning Brief at 9. Morning Brief at 9. First up, let's bring you all the headlines that we're tracking for you this Thursday morning. IndusInd Bank reports suspected fraud involving employees, uncovers almost 2,000 crore rupee impact as top executives resign. The bank reports massive decline in yearly net profit. Morgan Stanley upgrades India's GDP growth forecast to 6.2% for this financial year and 6.5% for FY27, citing domestic demand as key driver of growth and easing US-China trade tensions as secondary positive for India. Morgan Stanley also ups Sensex target to 89,000, beating the September 2024 lifetime high by June of next year. Sees 1 lakh in bull case on strong earning outlook and reform momentum. And staying with India's growth projection, meanwhile, India stands well positioned to navigate the ongoing global headwinds with confidence, ready to harness emerging opportunities and consolidate its role as a key driver of global growth, says RBI in its May State of the Economy bulletin. Meanwhile, the Employee Provident Fund Organization or EPFO reports net addition of 14.6 lakh subscribers in the month of March, led by young enrollments and rising female participation, with Maharashtra leading job creation across states. Indigo flight from Delhi to Srinagar faces terrifying mid-air hailstorm that severely damages the aircraft's nose cone, forcing the pilot to declare an emergency. Plane lands safely at Srinagar airport with no injuries reported. And it seems like the COVID fear is lurking back. Kerala reports 182 new COVID cases in the month of May as State Health Minister Veena George urges caution over rising infections and new Omicron subvariants. Centre issues notice to Uber over advanced tipping feature, warns of probe into Rapido and other ride-hailing apps for unfair trade practices. Meanwhile, quick commerce company Swiggy introduces Drops feature, offering limited edition chef-curated dishes from popular restaurants to create exclusive, time-limited food experiences. We'll bring you all these stories over the next 1 hour or so. But first up, let's look at our top story this morning. IndusInd Bank has reported suspected fraud involving its own employees, raising concerns over accounting practices, balance sheet discrepancies and irregularities in its derivatives as well as microfinance portfolios. Now, in a regulatory filing, the Hinduja family-led private lender said that based on internal audits and findings by an external agency, its board suspects the occurrence of fraud against the bank with the possible involvement of employees who played major roles in accounting as well as financial reporting. The bank's board has directed that the matter be reported to investigative agencies and regulatory authorities. It has also called for strict accountability to be fixed on those responsible for the lapses. Now, the issues first came to light in the month of March when IndusInd Bank revealed accounting lapses in its derivative portfolio estimated to impact as much as 2.35% of its net worth as of December 2024. Now, following this, it appointed PwC to conduct a forensic review. PwC has now quantified the total negative impact at a staggering almost 2,000 crore rupees as of June 2024. Now, on April 29th, remember, both CEO Sumant Katapalya and Deputy CEO Arun Khurana had resigned. The bank has since formed a committee of executives to oversee operations until a new MD and CEO is appointed. Now, separately, the Internal Audit Department uncovered further irregularities, as much as almost 600 crore rupees in unsubstantiated balances under other assets and 674 crore rupees in incorrectly recorded interest from the microfinance portfolio over 3 quarters. Now, as a result, IndusInd Bank has reported a consolidated net loss of over 2,300 crore rupees for the March ended 2025 ended quarter. Now, for the full fiscal year 2024-25, net profit plunged over 71% to just 2,576 crore rupees compared to almost 8,977 crore rupees in FY24. Global financial firm Morgan Stanley has revised India's economic growth forecast upwards for the coming years. The firm now expects the Indian economy to grow at 6.2% in FY26, up from its earlier estimate of 6.1%, and 6.5% in FY27, revised from 6.3%. Now, this upward revision, according to Morgan Stanley, is supported by the de-escalation of US-China trade tensions, which is expected to marginally boost external demand. However, the report makes it clear that the primary reason for India's growth will continue to be its domestic demand. It notes that internal economic momentum remains strong, especially amid persistent global uncertainty. The brokerage added that government policy support in the form of easy monetary policy and capital expenditure-focused fiscal policy will help sustain this momentum. It said macroeconomic stability is also in a comfortable zone. Now, on the consumption front, Morgan Stanley sees the recovery becoming more broad-based, with urban demand improving and rural consumption already showing strength. On the investment side, public and household capital expenditure and currently leading the charge, while private corporate investment is expected to gradually recover. Now, on the policy front, the firm anticipates that the Reserve Bank of India will continue with a deeper monetary easing cycle, especially as inflation is under control and growth remains moderate. Meanwhile, the Reserve Bank of India has projected India's GDP growth for FY26 at 6.5%, slightly more optimistic than Morgan Stanley's revised forecast of 6.2%. And staying with India's economic growth, amid global trade realignments and industrial policy shifts, India is increasingly positioned to function as what the RBI calls a connector country that can become a key intermediary in sectors such as technology, digital services, as well as pharmaceuticals. The Reserve Bank's latest bulletin, released on Wednesday, said the recent completion of free trade agreements with UK points to a strengthening of bilateral trade linkages. As per the RBI State of the Economy article published in the May bulletin, going forward, notwithstanding daunting challenges on the horizon, India stands well positioned to navigate the ongoing global headwinds with confidence, ready to harness emerging opportunities and consolidate its role as a key driver of global growth. Now, the RBI bulletin also mentioned that various high-frequency indicators of industrial and services sectors sustained their momentum in the month of April. In addition to that, a bumper Rabi harvest and higher acreage for summer crops, coupled with favorable southwest monsoon forecasts for 2025, also augur well for India's agriculture sector. All of this cumulatively hoping to achieve the 6.5% growth rate for India this fiscal, as per the RBI's original estimates. Now remember, India's inflation, the consumer price index or CPI inflation, has ticked below the RBI's 4% threshold successively, making room for more rate cuts to follow after the central bank slashed policy rate by 25 basis points in the February and April Monetary Policy Committee review. The next rate decision is scheduled to be announced on June 6th. And while the monsoon is expected to bode well for India's economy, unprecedented rain and hailstorm has not gone down too well. An Indigo flight from Delhi to Srinagar turned into a terrifying ordeal when it was struck by a severe hailstorm mid-air, damaging the nose cone of the aircraft. Now, flight 6E2142 carrying 227 passengers faced sudden turbulence while approaching Srinagar. The pilot declared an emergency and the plane landed safely at 6:30 p.m., though it sustained visible damage. No injuries have been reported. These are visuals from that horrific experience that passengers had to face aboard the Indigo flight from New Delhi to Srinagar. There are also images of the aircraft, and these images show that the plane's nose shattered as a result of the storm's fury. Eyewitnesses described it as a near-death experience, with passengers screaming and praying as the plane shook severely. Indigo released a statement confirming the incident and said the crew followed protocol. The aircraft has been grounded for inspection and repair. All passengers and crew were evacuated safely at the Srinagar airport.
मैं भी इस फ्लाइट में था जो कि दिल्ली से श्रीनगर आने वाली थी 6E2142 जी। प्लेन बहुत नॉर्मली से चल रहा था, बट अचानक से अनाउंसमेंट आया कॉकपिट से कि फास्ट योर सीट बेल्ट, तो हम टर्बुलेंस होने वाली है। जो ही टर्बुलेंस स्टार्ट हुई, अब मैं आपको बोलूंगा कि ऐसी टर्बुलेंस हुई जो कि मैंने लाइफ में पहली बार देखी। ऐसी टर्बुलेंस हुई, और जो कि हमारे साथ पैसेंजर्स बैठे थे सब रो रहे थे कि ट्रॉमेटाइज हुए कि इस वाली टर्बुलेंस से। जो कि मैं फ्रीक्वेंट फ्लायर हूं, मैंने आज तक ऐसी कभी टर्बुलेंस देखी नहीं है लाइफ में कि ऐसा टर्बुलेंस जैसे हमने आज फेस किया। फिर जब हमें प्लेन से डिबोर्ड किया, तब कि हमने जब प्लेन की हालत भी देखी, प्लेन की हालत देखी, तब हम और डर गए। बट हम थैंकफुल है पायलट की जिसने श्रीनगर में लैंड किया सेफली।
All right, moving on now. The Employee Provident Fund Organization, or EPFO, managing retirement savings for salaried workers, has reported a net addition of 14.6 lakh subscribers in March, marking a steady rise in organized employment. Now, out of these new subscribers, just over half were first-time enrollments, with the EPFO recording 7,54,000 new employees in the month of March. This reflects a 1.15% increase in net subscriber additions compared to March of last year, marking slightly improving formal job opportunities in the country. Now, subscribers between the age group of 18 to 25 accounted for nearly 59% of the new additions, with 4,45,000 fresh sign-ups in the month of March 2025 alone. Now, this age group saw a monthly growth of over 4% and an annual rise of almost 5%. Now, in addition to fresh enrollments, 13.2 lakh former EPFO members rejoined during the month of March, showing a 12% jump year on year. These members switched jobs within the EPFO covered sectors. New female subscribers reached 2,08,000 in the month of March, up more than 4% compared to last year. The net payroll addition for women rose by nearly 1%, signifying a positive move towards a more diverse and inclusive formal workforce in India. Now, let's look at it regionally. Maharashtra led job creation, contributing over 20% of net payroll additions in the month of March. Other states making major contributions, each adding more than 5%, include the states of Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Haryana, Gujarat, Delhi, Uttar Pradesh, as well as Telangana. Now, the centre has issued a notice to ride-hailing giant Uber, giving the company 15 days to respond regarding concerns over its practice of collecting tips in advance from passengers to secure rides. According to media reports, a similar preliminary inquiry may soon be initiated against another ride-hailing platform, Rapido, if it is found of engaging in the same conduct. According to a senior government official, advanced tipping creates an unfair bias in service delivery and is being examined as a violation of consumer rights. The Central Consumer Protection Authority, or CCPA, is closely reviewing app-based ride services to ensure that consumer interests are protected. Uber's advanced tip feature prompts users during the booking process to select a gratuity amount before the ride even begins, which has raised eyebrows among regulators. After issuing the notice to Uber, officials are now likely to scrutinize Rapido and possibly other ride-hailing companies for similar practices. Now, Union Minister for Consumer Affairs Prahlad Joshi took to social media to voice his concerns over this practice, calling it unethical and exploitative to force or encourage users to pay tips in advance just to receive quicker service. Joshi stressed that tips should be voluntary, given as a token of appreciation, not a requirement to secure rides. And staying with the world of startups, Swiggy has introduced a new feature called Drops, a first of its kind offering that aims to add exclusivity to the food delivery experience. With Drops, Swiggy is partnering with some of India's top chefs and cult favorite restaurants to offer limited edition dishes that are available only for a short time and in limited quantities. Remember, these exclusive recipes are not found on regular menus and are available only during specific drop events. Users can register their interest in advance on the Swiggy app. Once the available slots are filled, a wait list is activated and reminders are sent as the drop time approaches. According to Swiggy's Chief Business Officer for Food Marketplace, Drops gives users the chance to try unique dishes created and crafted by their favorite chefs and restaurants, while also helping restaurant partners generate buzz and test innovative recipes in a fresh, engaging way. And with that, we will slip into a very short break. But coming up on the other side of the break is not just the mood check on the Lal Street with Kranti Batini, but also the possibility of Sensex breaching its lifetime high of 89,000 by the month of June next year, and the possibility of also touching the 1 lakh mark next year. This as per Morgan Stanley. We'll discuss this on the other side of the break. You are watching Morning Brief at 9.
This is the drive of your dreams.
You and I, we are dreamers. You and I, we are believers.
Introducing the all-new Skoda Kailak. Own your dream.
Skoda.
News never lies.
But on the twisting highways of headlines, every turn brings a new story.
So buckle up for Pune Highway.
Because the story is going to twist at every turn.
डेड बॉडी कभी झूठ नहीं बोलती.
You will need News 9 to stay with the truth.
Watch News 9.
English news as it should be.
And don't miss our film Pune Highway. In theaters
23rd May.
Every brand tells a story. And they are the storytellers, the Sutradhars. They present a brand with band, baja and barat to you. They are the Brandwalas.
Welcome back. You're watching Morning Brief at 9. We will bring you the mood check on the Lal Street. Markets have opened in the negative territory, but what's really driving the momentum down this morning is not domestic factors, but what's happening globally. Well, US stocks ended sharply lower on Wednesday, rattled by a surge in Treasury yields. Investors grew wary that President Donald Trump's proposed tax cut bill could balloon the national debt by trillions of dollars if passed by Congress. More details in this report.
U.S. stocks closed sharply lower on Wednesday, with the Dow down nearly 2%, the S&P 500 shedding 1.6%, and the Nasdaq losing 1.4%. All three indexes suffered their biggest daily percentage losses in a month. A soft auction of 20-year Treasury bonds pushed longer-dated yields higher, with the 10-year Treasury yield touching its highest level since mid-February. George Cipollone, portfolio manager at Penn Mutual Asset Management, said bond investors were worried that U.S. government debt would swell if Congress passes President Donald Trump's proposed tax cut bill.
Interest rates shot up across the board. It went up over 10 basis points.
over the 20-year and over the 30-year yield, and that's problematic. As we get through 5%, which now we are clearly through, it tends to gum up the works in the economy, in terms of consumer confidence, in terms of the stock market. And it's one of the big indicators that we're keeping an eye on right now. How much further can we go through 5%? Or hopefully yields have peaked here.
Among individual stock moves, shares of United Health Group dropped nearly 6% after a report in The Guardian said the healthcare conglomerate secretly paid nursing homes thousands of dollars in bonuses to help reduce hospital transfers for ailing residents. HSBC downgraded the stock to reduce from hold. Shares of Target fell more than 5% after the retailer slashed its annual forecast due to a pullback in discretionary spending. And 6 of the Magnificent 7 names finished lower. Alphabet was the lone exception, climbing more than 2.5%. Also on Wednesday, the price of Bitcoin rose to its highest level on record, trading just shy of $110,000.
All right, and they say that when US sneezes, the world catches a cold, and that seems to be true even for markets around the world. We saw the Dow Jones, the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq slip more than 1.5% in trade yesterday, and that seems to be weighing down heavily on the Asian markets as well. Let's look at the mood on Asian markets as they open. Most of these open a few hours before the Indian stock markets, and the Indian stock markets are also feeling the pressure today. Hong Kong's Hang Seng is down almost 0.5% in trade, just 2 or 3 hours into trading right now. So is the case, in fact, even with the TAIEX, the Taiwanese index, which is very closely linked to the entire boom in artificial intelligence. And when Nasdaq tumbles, a direct impact can be seen on Taiwan Stock Exchange as well. So TAIEX is also down about 0.6 of a percentage point. More pain coming in for Japan. Japan is down almost 1 percentage point this morning, 0.9% or so. And the pain actually seems to also be coming, in fact, more of it coming from KOSPI, the Korean index, which is down about 1.6%. No impact really on the Shanghai Composite Index, which is trading flat a little in the green. Indian markets are not spared either. Let's look at the mood check on the Wall Street as markets opened just a few minutes back. We're seeing the Sensex and the Nifty both down more than 0.5 percentage point in early trade. Sensex is now down about 0.65%. So it's the case with the Nifty 50. Sensex below the 82,000 levels that we had seen earlier, and now just about struggling to maintain the 81,000 levels. Meanwhile, Nifty 50 is down to about 24,600 levels, well below the 25,000 levels that we had previously seen in the resurgence of India's stock markets. Meanwhile, there is also action coming in from the small cap and mid cap space. Not as much pain that can be seen in these two indices this morning. The Nifty mid cap index is down about 0.5 percentage point, 0.46% or so, while the small cap index is down just about 0.2%. The fear index, the volatility, which shoots up sharply every time there is some stress, some pressure felt, is up this morning as well, and it's back to the 18 levels, up almost 2.7% or so as of the last 7 or 8 minutes since markets opened at 9:15 a.m. this morning. Let's look at the Nifty 50 heat map and try and make sense of where the pain is really coming from, and it seems the pain is coming from everywhere. It's an absolute red on the Nifty 50 heat map. You're seeing the IT sector bleeding heavily. This is a direct impact of what we saw on Nasdaq yesterday. You had stocks of Apple and stocks of Nvidia, stocks of all major blue chip American IT companies take a massive beating, and that sentiment seems to be reflecting on the Indian IT stocks this morning. Look at TCS, look at Infosys, HCL Tech. HCL Tech down almost 2%, a majority of its business linked to what's happening in US and Europe, and that is seeming a massive pain coming in this morning. Also, Infosys is down about 1.35%. TCS is down almost 1.3%. Meanwhile, Tech Mahindra is down more than 2%, 2.13% in just the last 10 minutes or so since the Indian stock markets open. It's not just the IT sector which is feeling the pain. There is also pressure on the oil sector, the energy sector, and that is where stocks of Reliance and ONGC come into play. Remember, there are reports which are indicating that Israel could intensify its attack on Iran's nuclear facilities, and that region going into a heat zone as far as conflict is concerned then becomes all the more painful for oil companies and energy companies. And that is a reflection that we are seeing in Reliance and ONGC this morning. Reliance is down almost 1%, and so is the case with ONGC. Meanwhile, sectors which are not directly dominated or impacted by what is happening in the US, including consumer durables and the auto sector, even these seem to be taking a beating in trade this morning. So yeah, the entire story on the Nifty 50 heat map is not really looking too good. And of course, we will have Kranti Batini join us and put all of this in perspective for us in just a few minutes from now. But meanwhile, there is some positive news, at least on the horizon, as far as India's stock markets are concerned. And that is coming by way of global brokerage Morgan Stanley, which has turned more bullish on India's equity markets for next year, at least, revising its Sensex target to as much as 89,000 by June 2026. Now, this is an 8% increase from current levels. Now, in a bull case scenario, Morgan Stanley says that the Sensex could potentially even touch as much as 1,100,000 within the next 12 months. Well, so all those expectations that people had last year of Sensex touching 1 lakh could perhaps potentially eventually come true in about 12 months or so from now, when, according to Morgan Stanley, if everything goes well, then Sensex would touch that 1 lakh magic figure in the next 12 months. Now, the firm assigns a 30% probability for this event, and this is mostly driven by favorable domestic reforms and supportive global conditions. Now, Morgan Stanley also expects Sensex earnings to compound at nearly 17% annually through FY 2028, with robust domestic growth, stable oil prices, no US recession, and easing interest rates forming the core of its assumptions. It further noted that retail participation remains a key structural support. Now, in a bull case, the upside to 1 lakh could be driven by oil prices staying below $65 a barrel. In addition to that, GST rate cuts, reforms in agriculture, and earnings growth touching a CAGR of 19%. So these are the multiple points to note in those expectations of Sensex touching the 1 lakh mark in the next 12 months in a bull case scenario. Well, Kranti Batini, equity strategist at Wealth Mill Security, joins me this morning. Kranti, good morning. Pleasure having you back with us on News 9. Well, let's start first with what's happening on Dalal Street today. It's a sea of red on the Nifty 50. In fact, all stocks, all indices, all sectors seem to be bleeding this morning. A direct impact of what we saw in US, then knocking on with its effect on Asian markets and India as well. That seems to be my understanding, Kranti.
Absolutely, Karthik. Indian markets, after climbing all the wall of worries, the geopolitical escalations and also the trade wars, we could be able to form a better base for the market. In fact, market was about 25,000 levels of Nifty. We're forming a base. The foreign portfolio investors in the last 20 trading sessions, they infused around more than 50,000 crores into Indian markets. So we had a strong rally, and what we are witnessing is some kind of a rub-off effect at this point of time, some kind of profit booking. And also the global cues have been weighing on the market, creating some pressure on the market in the medium to short term. But what I sense and what I believe at this point of time is definitely Indian market is a buy and dips market. The earnings season, the Q4 earnings season, we had a very good, decent earnings season. We have witnessed earnings expansion in majority of the companies, and also there were completely no negative surprises. That makes the markets to be definitely a buy and dips kind of a market. This is a short-term phenomena, but the global cues are completely important going ahead. By and large, any dip on Indian markets is a warranted buy.
Right, a warranted buy, and this is a major dip that we are seeing this morning. The index is down now, almost touching the 0.9%, and this is just the first, about 15 minutes of trading. We could see more dips coming in trade this morning and perhaps in later parts of the day as well before potentially some consolidation. But Kranti, I want you to put in perspective for our viewers what really seems to be the fear in the US. A tax cut is usually seen as good news, but it seems that the fear could be emanating from the fact that tax cuts could increase US's overall deficit and current account deficit, and hence more external borrowing could also derail the fiscal deficit in the US. And is that something which, coupled with what Moody's is saying that the debt could balloon to $37 trillion, spooking investors away from the US markets?
Absolutely, Karthik. US economy caught in between ice and the fire. That's where the ripple effects are happening, taking place in the market. And also look at the policy measures they are taking. One hand, they've taken very aggressive measures, imposing the tariffs on across the broad spectrum of 194 countries. They never left any island also. And that created a immense pressure on the market at the initial stage. They given some kind of a relaxation, and they deferred the decision. Now they are unilaterally they taken that tariff decisions. Now they got into the bilateral negotiations with everyone, and market is on a recovery path. But any tax cut, the immediate impact on the market is first on the deficit. But the consumption and all, it will slowly move up. Markets are always a forward-looking animals, and in the short term to medium term, immediately, it looks like a overhang on the market. That's what causing the concerns for the market in the medium to short term. Always market looks what's going to happen immediately. That's where the overhang is getting created. As President Trump always says, this time I'm not worried about the short-term implications on the market. I'm trying to fix the long-term repairs, long-term fault lines of the economy. That's what he's trying to address, but he's not fully addressing that also. So he's bending in between. That's what taking place, the stagflation, and also the key concerns ballooning debt of US economy.
So, Kranti, I want to draw your attention to IT stocks. Every time you join us, IT sector seems to be in some sort of a stress. We discussed it last time around also when you were here. But it seems that the IT sector is really under tremendous pressure right now. We haven't really seen the recovery. Even though we've seen the recovery of the Sensex and the Nifty at a broad level, IT sector has particularly been really jittery ever since Donald Trump has taken oath and come to the Oval Office. And this morning, again, a direct impact of what we saw on NASDAQ now playing out on the IT sector. Look at HCL Tech, look at Tech Mahindra. They're both down more than 2% in early trade today. TCS and Infosys also down about 1.3, 1.4% or so. So what should one do with IT stocks? Because IT was pretty much the bellwether for the Indian stock markets, and it was this sort of, Teflon coated sector that is always going to work for India's advantage, and that doesn't seem to be the case anymore.
Karthik, on a longer term perspective, these IT stocks have been weathered all the implications. They have witnessed the Y2Ks and 2008, the great financial crisis, and they witnessed the COVID. And so they went through different phases of the economy, different cycles of the economy. And now this is one more cycle the IT is trying to weather. If the investors are a long-term investors, given the kind of strong business models these companies derive, any dip on IT is a good buy for the longer term investors. Definitely in the medium to short term, the US recession worries, and also the economy, how the corporate budgets of US they're going to shape up in the next coming quarters, that plays an important role. And also the US the corporates, they are in a wait and watch mode right now. They're not expanding their capacities. They are in a wait and watch mode, and also a lot of uncertainty is there in the US corporates. That's creating the overhang on the IT at this point of time. And we also seeing some kind of softening of the dollar. That's also creating some kind of extra pressure on the IT companies in the medium to short term. Until unless the investors are really a long-term investors, if they have a time frame more than 1 year, and if the US economy, whatever be the President Trump is telling, the MAGA So that's really happening. Then IT stocks are going to form up well. Otherwise, they're going to face this heat in the medium to short term.
All right. And as you're speaking, Kranti, markets have now dipped. They are down more than 1% already in just about, 20 minutes or so of trading. Sensex and Nifty are both down more than 1% in trade already. And now the 81,000 levels, although Sensex also not holding, Nifty 50 there now coming down to about 24,560 odd levels. But contrary to what we are seeing on the screen, Kranti, there is a report from Morgan Stanley which states that perhaps if everything goes well, India's Sensex could perhaps touch 89,000 levels in June next year, June 2026. And if things go even better than expected, then we could be staring at Sensex touching 1 lakh in the next 12 months or so. And now, of course, there are lots of terms and conditions for this 1 lakh vision to happen. We'll go through them also one by one. But broadly, I mean, there were reports and there were indications that even December 2024 could have seen Sensex touching 1 lakh. And then we saw what really happened after September and the sort of misery which investors are dealing with up until even May of 2025. But Sensex at 1 lakh, too optimistic in your opinion?
Yeah, Karthik, it can be, as you mentioned, the report comes up with a lot of ifs and buts and the conditions that is embedded in the report. By and large, Karthik, India is one of the safe haven, and we are at a sweet spot in the entire equity space is concerned. That gives the optimism for the writer of the report, Rhythm, to envisage the Indian markets at 1 lakh, Sensex at 1 lakh. Definitely, it may happen, but definitely what I can watch for this report is Indian markets by and large are going to be a stock pickers market. Okay, everyone who are in the market, their stock picking skills are going to be tested in the Indian market. I'll just take a minute to how the changing narrative that's taking place. Karthik, I'll just envisage.
Sure.
Till the time the US president assumed the Oval Office, everybody thought US market is going to witness a dream rally, and that's what witnessed. And we have witnessed an exodus of foreign portfolio funds going back to the US market across the globe. And there was a narrative, sell India, buy China, because the valuations look very attractive and relatively compared. Now the narrative is completely changed.
Tables have turned completely.
Yeah. So the narrative is completely changing, Karthik. So in these kind of changing narratives, fast-paced narratives, anything can happen in the world.
Absolutely. Anything can happen in the world, and narratives, it's a battle of narratives more than a battle of facts. Well, we'll leave it at that, Kranti. Thank you so much for taking the time and being here with us on Newsline this morning.
Thank you, Karthik. Always my pleasure.
And let's move on now to not good news coming in from Kerala. Kerala is once again on alert as State Health Minister Veena George has confirmed a fresh spike in COVID-19 cases in the month of May. A total of 182 cases have been reported across the state so far, with Kottayam recording the highest at 57, followed by Ernakulam with 34 and Thiruvananthapuram at 30 cases. The minister sounded the alarm after chairing a high-level rapid response team meeting, warning that Kerala could see a further rise in infections similar to the surge currently being seen in Southeast Asian countries. The variants in circulation, Omicron sub-lineages, the JN.1, LF.7 and NB1.8 are known for their high transmissibility, though fortunately the severity remains relatively low. Now, Veena George urged citizens to exercise vigilance and self-protection, especially those experiencing symptoms like cold, sore throat, cough or breathing difficulty. Wearing a mask is essential in such cases. She also advised elderly individuals, pregnant women and those with chronic illnesses to wear masks in public and while traveling. Now, hospitals across the state have been instructed to test all symptomatic individuals and ensure the availability of RT-PCR kits and protective gear. And before we slip into a break, let's look at all the global stories that we are tracking for you this Thursday morning. US President Donald Trump ambushes South African President Cyril Ramaphosa in Oval Office with claims of white genocide. Donald Trump admits his own administration's cuts to US aid have had severe global consequences. US Secretary of State Rubio says US is reviewing whether to classify Afghanistan's ruling Taliban as foreign terrorist group. And we told you US stocks plummet as bond yields spike on fears of Trump's tax plan, and that could balloon the US deficit. Prime Minister Mark Carney says Canada is exploring investment in Trump's $175 billion missile defense shield, the Golden Dome. And the world's largest cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, surges to all-time peak as crypto sentiment improves. Meanwhile, Iran vows to continue uranium enrichment with or without a deal with the United States as fresh talks loom in Rome. Oil has jumped over 1% amid reports of Israeli plans to hit Iranian nuclear sites. And legendary iPhone designer John Eve teams up with OpenAI to build the next generation AI hardware. These stories on the other side. You are watching Morning Brief at 9.
Teams. Over 300 of India's top professionals. One unforgettable championship. Hosted by the legend Pullela Gopichand. At the Mecca of Indian badminton, the Gopichand Academy. News 9 brought together the biggest names in the corporate world at the News 9 Corporate Badminton Championship 2025. From Infosys to Amazon, the biggest names from the corporate world came to play and play hard. It was 3 days of power-packed action and the spirit of sport at its finest. Relive the moments, celebrate the champions, only on News 9.
Let's look at all the global stories that we're tracking for you this morning. A tense meeting between US President Donald Trump and South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa saw Trump confront his guest with a video backing discredited claims of violence against white farmers in South Africa. The fiery exchange marked the most controversial moment of the much-anticipated White House encounter. Here's how the meeting unfolded.
A lot of people are very concerned with regard to South Africa.
U.S. President Donald Trump confronted South African President Cyril Ramaphosa at the White House on Wednesday with allegations of mass killings and land seizures from white people.
But we have many people that feel they're being persecuted and they're coming to the United States. So we take from many locations if we feel there's persecution or genocide going on. Generally, they're white farmers and they're fleeing South Africa.
South Africa rejects the allegation that white people are disproportionately targeted by crime.
There is criminality in our country. People who do get killed, unfortunately through criminal activity, are not only white people. Majority of them are black people. And we have now been utilized.
The farmers are not black.
You are raising concerns, and these are concerns that we are willing to talk to you about.
Ramaphosa arrived saying he wanted to discuss trade and critical minerals. The televised Oval Office meeting got off to a cordial start.
What a group of golfers South Africa's had on
yes.
But then took a turn in a scene reminiscent of Trump's February ambush of Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky.
You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
turn the lights down.
On Wednesday, Trump showed a video and held up printed articles purporting to show evidence to back up his unfounded claims that white South Africans are being persecuted.
You can do whatever you want to do.
Ramaphosa said he had not seen the video before and that he would like to find out what the location was. South Africa endured centuries of draconian discrimination against black people during colonialism and apartheid before becoming a multi-party democracy in 1994 under Nelson Mandela. It rejects Trump's allegations.
I would say if there was Afrikaner farmer genocide, I can bet you these three gentlemen would not be here, including my Minister of Agriculture. He would not be with me.
In recent months, Trump has criticized a new land reform law aimed at redressing the injustices of apartheid. The law allows for expropriations without compensation when in the public interest. For example, if land is lying fallow. No such expropriation has taken place, and any order can be challenged in court. Trump has also criticized South Africa's genocide court case against Israel. Trump has canceled aid, expelled South Africa's ambassador, and offered refuge to white minority Afrikaners based on racial discrimination claims Pretoria says are baseless.
Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump has now made a U-turn, admitting that his administration's cuts to the US Agency for International Development, or USAID, and its aid programs worldwide have had devastating impact. Now, speaking beside South African President Cyril Ramaphosa during a White House visit on Wednesday, Trump was asked about his decision to cut most foreign aid and its impact in Africa. Listen in.
You know, it's devastating, and hopefully a lot of people are going to start spending a lot of money. And I've talked to other nations. We want them to chip in and spend money too. And we've spent a lot, and it's a tremendous problem going on in many countries. A lot of problems going on. The United States always gets the request for money. Nobody else helps, as you know. Europe doesn't help. Europe hasn't given anything. All they do is sue our companies. You know, they sue Apple, and they sue all of our companies. Apple had to pay $17 billion on a nonsense lawsuit. Very unfair. But we're going to always be there to help.
And staying with the U.S., Secretary of State Marco Rubio told lawmakers in Capitol Hill that Washington is reviewing whether to officially designate Afghanistan's ruling party, the Taliban, as a foreign terrorist organization or not. Rubio made the statement while addressing the House Foreign Affairs Committee during a hearing on Wednesday.
I believe that classification is now once again under review. As you know, we've had some success over the last few weeks in getting some Americans that were detained released, but we'll have some decisions to make. That designation ultimately will be based on a holistic approach to what we think our future policy is going to be with regards to Afghanistan. We're clearly aware of who they are and what they've done in the past. We'd like to see more cooperation from them on Al-Qaeda and other elements in the country that we'd like to see targeted.
And staying with North America, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney said his government is exploring possible investments in US President Donald Trump's proposed $175 billion Golden Dome missile defense shield. Speaking on Wednesday, Carney confirmed he had discussed the system designed to counter threats from China and Russia directly with Donald Trump.
I mean, these are some of the threats that our nation faces. We take those threats seriously. We take our responsibilities as a government seriously, as I just said. It's one of the reasons why we made the commitment back in March for the over-the-horizon radar, the first phase of the over-horizon radar system, and that was an independent decision that we took. We are conscious that we have an ability, if we so choose, to complete the Golden Dome with investments and partnership. And it's something that we are looking at and something that has been discussed at a high level, but I'm not sure one negotiates on this. These are military decisions.
Mark Carney there saying that Canada may invest in the $175 billion Golden Dome program. Now, meanwhile, Bitcoin has hit a new record high on Wednesday. The world's largest cryptocurrency climbed past the $109,000 mark, surging to $1,09,760 per coin before settling slightly lower. The rally comes amid easing trade tensions between the US and China and a downgrade of US sovereign debt by Moody's, which has pushed investors towards alternate investment assets, including cryptocurrency. Now, surprisingly, Ether, the second largest cryptocurrency, did not follow suit. It slipped by 0.5% to trade at just $2,513 per coin. Experts say the growing distrust in traditional markets and weakening confidence in the dollar are driving up Bitcoin and its upward momentum. Now, Britain is feeling the heat of rising prices. Inflation came in higher than expected for the month of April, with key categories closely watched by the Bank of England showing notable surges. The spike has shaken investor confidence and could force the bank to rethink its already cautious pace on interest rate cuts. Markets are now pricing in a slower path ahead as policymakers navigate between controlling inflation and supporting the Britain economy. Take a look at this report.
Britain suffered a bigger than expected inflation surge in April. It includes areas watched closely by the Bank of England. Investors now believe the bank will have to slow its already gradual pace of interest rate cuts. Inflation leapt to 3.5% in April from 2.6% in March. It's the highest reading since January last year, and the largest increase between 2 months since 2022, when inflation was rocketing above 10%. A jump in airfares over the Easter holiday was a driver of the sharp climb, but the data will add to unease over the outlook for Britain's economy. It grew strongly in early 2025, but is likely to slow in the second half of the year. Finance Minister Rachel Reeves said she was disappointed by the inflation figures. Sterling rose against the US dollar after they were published. The chance of a rate cut in August was cut to 40% by investors, down from 60% before the inflation data. British newspapers had labelled last month as awful April because of increases in gas, electricity and water prices, alongside higher taxes on employers, all of which are likely to push up prices. Looking ahead, the Bank of England has predicted that inflation will hit 3.7% by September.
And moving to the world of gadgets and artificial intelligence. Now, the legendary designer behind Apple's iPhone, Johnny Ive, has joined OpenAI to create devices tailored for using generative artificial intelligence, according to a video posted Wednesday by the ChatGPT maker. Ive and his team will take over design at OpenAI as part of an acquisition of his startup named IO, valued at $6.5 billion. Now, sharing no details, OpenAI Chief Executive Sam Altman said in the video that a prototype shared by Ive is the coolest piece of technology that the world would have ever seen. Meanwhile, staying with artificial intelligence, Google is stepping up its AI game to stay ahead of rivals like OpenAI. The company is rolling out AI-powered search to more users, allowing them to ask complex questions and get computer-generated answers. This comes as Google faces increased competition from AI startups and reassesses its dominant search market share. We leave you with that story.
Google is doubling down on AI-powered search. The tech giant said Tuesday that its latest system would allow users to ask almost anything, from simple queries to the most complex research questions. Sundar Pichai, the boss of parent firm Alphabet, set out the new AI mode at the tech giant's annual conference in California.
Users have been asking much longer queries, 2 to 3 times the length of traditional searches. And you can go further with follow-up questions. All of this is available today as a new tab right in search.
The new search mode is powered by Google's Gemini AI model. Over time, its abilities will be integrated into the regular search box. Tuesday also saw the demonstration of other products, including smart glasses. They also feature AI integration and claim to offer simultaneous translation between languages. Google also launched a subscription option priced at just under $250 per month. It offers higher limits on AI usage and early access to experimental tools, including a browser extension dubbed Project Mariner.
It's an agent that can interact with the web and get stuff done. Stepping back, we think of agents as systems that combine the intelligence of advanced AI models with access to tools. They can take actions on your behalf and under your control.
All the activity comes as Google feels the pressure to stay ahead of rivals like OpenAI. The ChatGPT maker is among firms offering their own take on AI search, potentially threatening Google's core business.
"64 teams, over 300 of India's top professionals, one unforgettable championship." Hosted by the legend Pullela Gopichand at the Mecca of Indian badminton, the Gopichand Academy.